Okay, welcome back. Now, this lecture 3 is about population forecast and water demand. And basically, if you look at the stages in a water supply project, is where your father has been there, all the three. You have to first do a preliminary report. This is common for any engineering project. Any engineering project you take, these steps should be there. Then conducting a detailed survey, and you have to make a project report. One of the important things in the project report is you should give a conclusion. Is it feasible or is it not feasible? In a country like India, our Prime Minister has told Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. I'm sure nobody will dare go and tell him, Sir, Swachh Bharat is not possible. People still, educated people still throw garbage. You should see the number of people who throw the. Huh? Awareness is there, but you see in the exam hall I was so disappointed. People sharpen, put it down, they don't care. They take a scale, they throw it, yes, throw it like this. Then they go on. Okay, so this is the truth about Swachh Bharat in my view. Hmm. Good faith. Promise. Manifesto. That is true. See, as long as educated people are going to stay out of politics, as long as educated people are not going to voice their view. Okay. For instance, in this recent floods, one doctor was saying, I have been helping people for the past so many years. Which people, slum dwellers, all these people, always they'll get every rain they'll get affected. This is the first time the middle class has got affected. So all are raising a hue and cry. It's coming to the open. What are you doing these 25 years? Good question. No answer. Okay. There are also a lot of debates I understand in the TV. House owners are telling, I mean, those who bought flats, you should have told, you are the builder, you are the expert. Why did you do it? Why did you build in this particular area? How did you get a permit? So this fellow will immediately put the blame on the councillor. He says, I can't do it because I have to pay him bribe. If I have to pay him bribe, I have to get only the place which is available. So many stories they say. It is not going to end like that. Water hammer. Yeah, so I don't know what to tell about that, but okay, one of the saddest thing is a civil engineer is actually expected to know a lot of things. Okay, but civil engineers, I don't know, they prefer not to know it for some reason. Okay, so whatever it is, but one thing is there, a civil engineer who is able to just grasp the rudiments, he can go and challenge the mechanical engineer and say this will happen. Won't it happen? The moment you do it, everybody gets alert. Same thing happens with electrical. So you go and talk. If it just makes a little sense, you'll find that people respect you. And all of us, I don't know, VIT does it have basic electrical engineering? Not for sale. Very unfortunate. Okay. Because we did three-phase motor, two-phase motor, what is HT, so many things we learned, which is actually very relevant. Okay. Probably we should tell this to the board. We'll see. Coming back here, conducting detailed engineering survey, all factors will be coming into the picture. And usually, what happens? What's the difference between an ordinary survey and a detailed survey? The scale on which you draw your map is different. So the preliminary survey, your scale will be like maybe even a few kilometers will put in 1 centimeter. Or as you go in for the detailed project report, you'll have to put in so much more information. For instance, if there is a temple, a very small roadside temple, very innocent looking, it will not even look, you may not even look and see it. It might be hiding behind a tree. But when you come there with a crowbar, I don't know what will happen. You know India. Okay, so this is the thing where detailed engineering survey is very, very critical. Okay? How we are going to circumvent problems. My grandfather worked in the railways. Okay, he retired from the railways. So he was telling me an instance where they were looking for a. I'm not able to remember the exact locations. They were looking for a location for a loco shed where they'll do the repairs for the locals. They're looking and looking, and then they finally identified a point. Then when they went to the original British survey drawings, they had already marked area earmarked for loco or carriage work, something of that nature. Already it has been done. Work has been done. Look at the foresight of the Britishers. Indians are in what way are we inferior to them? I don't know. Okay, so this is the thing about a detailed engineering survey. It takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of foresight, it takes a lot of vision when you are going to, you have to envision, okay, so much of space is required. I'll also give you another example. Those of you are familiar with Chennai, you will find that now initially there were two meter gauge lines and one main line they called it. Three lines were there, where the Mofussil trains will run, that was one line. In fact, that line was also added subsequently. Initially, there are only two lines, the electric suburban lines. Today, two suburban lines and two main lines of broad gauge have been done, and still, in so many places, there is scope for expansion. Look at the vision. Okay. So this is what we call by the detailed engineering survey. We do the forecasting, we do the planning, and can you imagine had they not got that land, will a suburban project been successful in Chennai? Would how many people, how many court cases would have come? I don't know. How many people would have allowed it? I don't know. So this is the important thing of the planning and foresight. Then you have to, of course, prepare the project report. Then there are detailed plans and estimates. Costing is very important, and most of the cases there is cost overrun. I don't know in India how many projects have actually been within the scheduled budget and made a profit. All these things is cost overrun. Some reason or other, like for example, is water hammer, classic example. It is there. It's going, it's broke. It's, now, this preliminary report, these are all points which are taken from that audit book. Okay, I'm not going to read each of these. I'm just putting it on the slideshow. Please go through the to what the government is actually telling us. Okay, so this is something about the engineering survey. So here is the homework which I'm giving you. Okay, list and enumerate details to be collected as part of the engineering survey. This handbook on works audit, water supply, the link is there at the end of this lecture. Only thing I have not done is I have not given you the deadline. When will you be able to give this? You have now actually two assignments already done. I've given you already two assignments. One is a digital assignment which will be seeing your login. Okay. You have you logged into the system? Have you logged into the system? What I gave one email, it might have come this morning. Okay, no problem. Yeah, coursework.pw. Yeah. So you just go and see. I already put up a digital assignment. Okay, the deadline is around 10th, 2 or 3 days. I want only 250 words. You can do two things. You can write it down in your notebook and do it. In my personal view, it's better you do it because today the college is allowing open book format. Also, suddenly they say, okay, so if that be the case, you have material. They may say you don't take your notebook, take your notes. That's a very good material. Okay, so please do some good work on this one. On a digital assignment also, you can do the digital assignment and then write it down and then put it as a digital assignment. This one is a manual assignment. You have to put it in your notebooks. Okay. When will you give this? When I put the same 10th, yeah, 10th. That's the 8, 9, 10 Thursday. More than enough time. More than enough time. Okay. So these are all stories which I don't want to talk in the class basically. So this is the objective. You should provide protected water supply system, safe, clean, etc. in correct quantity. Also, it should be conveniently and economically available. It is conveniently and economically available. What is the meaning of this? You have heard of the Rajasthani women, no? Keeping pots one over the other, walk many kilometers every day, spend a lot of time only for this purpose. So we should ensure that it is economically available also. Okay. So this is the design life of projects as given by as envisaged. Normally it is 30 years, but we are going to have a dam project, at least 50 years it should be there because the cost involved is so much more. Okay, so yeah, this is just you just need to know that this is the dates. I don't believe in asking people to mug up dates because what they can look up. Okay. So just have an idea of this. Now this is the other important thing which I would like you to go through. So these are the population forecast techniques. If you have a look at your book, I don't think it will be there in your book. Please have a look at your book. Is this population method of population forecasting available? Any of these? If it is available, I will not tell the story. Otherwise, I'll tell the story, and then you have to look at Santosh Kumar Gar. Okay, that book I know it has, and also this manual has because I've taken it from the manual. I'll suggest you go through the index. Last is the index available. I mean appendix, subject index. Apparently, it doesn't look like it's there. Okay, let's not worry about it. I'll just run through this, please. So first thing is the demograph method of population projection. What is this demograph method of population projection? So they know that this area, the population is not going to increase or decrease too much. Okay, certain areas will be there, age old. There will be births, there will be deaths, and based on that only the population is going to be there. It's not going to increase too drastically. You can see many of the remote villages, sizes don't change. Okay, for instance, my roots belong to a village called Minyanapuram, deep in the south. Even now, almost the houses are just the same. They look the same, same thatch house. In fact, my grandma who just passed away, we go and visit her house. It's almost the same. That's what my father says. It looks the same. I gone there. I usually go 5 years or 10 years. When I go there, there's not much change. Roads are still the same. Everything looks the same. No change. So for that village, for almost 100 years plus, the change has not been there. So are you going to expect suddenly a rapid change or sudden development? Probably not. So this one will be applicable for such a thing. Where you know how many people will be born, how many people are likely to die in a period. So that will be directly done. Then you have the arithmetical increase method. What is this arithmetical increase method? See, there are two ways you can keep adding numbers. You can keep adding plus one, plus one, plus one. That's arithmetic progression. Geometric progression will multiply it with a factor 2 into n plus 3 into n. So this sort of thing is a geometric progression. So here what we have is we have an arithmetic increase where we say that average increase because we have census data of 10 years. This year, first census at this much, second census was so much. So this is the increase. So you can find out a pattern or a trend. Then you can say this is going to be the population if I'm using the method of arithmetic increase method. Here, incremental increase means they increase it according to the arithmetic increase, but over and above that, they add one more factor. What has been the trend in increase will also be added into the figure. So, 10, 20, 30 years, this has been the average increase. So, we are adding one more factor as an average of all these increments and then project it to the next. Say, for example, 50 years you want to have a project. Next 50 years, this would have been the value of population. Okay. Now then we have the geometric increase where we see the percentage increase and then put it. Usually if a city is growing, normally they go for this method. Okay. Then we have decreasing rate of growth method. You suppose for instance, if you look at certain places like for instance I was going through Bhopal. Okay, how many people will really like to go and live in Bhopal? I don't know. Probably the population is decreasing. People might have sentiment value, people may not be wanting to go out of there, people may be still staying. So such a city, some cities die. Okay, some cities are actually dying. So when you think of that sort of a scenario, we usually go for the decreasing rate of growth method. So again, graphical method, very straightforward. You draw a graph, see how the population has been increasing. The moment you draw a graph, you know how it is going to be. You can extrapolate. So here what they do is they have two methods. They base it on a single city or they base it on a similar city or similar cities. So Chennai's growth, can we compare it to Delhi and Kolkata? Will it be suitable? May be suitable, may not be suitable. Another thing might be like, for example, they are building a new airport near Sri Perumbudur. Will it grow at the same rate as, for instance, a place in Chennai called Agambaka, where exponential growth is there after metro rail, the old suburban is also there, very close to the airport, all the facilities, there are actually four modes of transport apart from the roads, including roads, connectivity is very good. So five modes of transport is there for Agambakam today. So there the growth is very high. So suppose we are going to take the new airport at Sri Perumbudur, if it comes, will it experience a growth of this nature? That we can probably estimate based on taking a city or a area which is similar. Okay. So then we have the, sorry, tell me. Okay. Then we have the logistic method. Okay. So usually what happens is any growth is follows a S trend. There will be a very slow start. There will be a very rapid increase. Saturation will take place. Then you can't grow much more. This will be the normal trend. In fact, when we are doing project management, that was one of the things we are talking about. That's the way a project also runs. Costs initially it will not be much. Suddenly there will be a great escalation. Then it will taper down. So anything you see, it will follow this S-shaped curve when you're looking at growth. You want it to be in that pattern. In fact, uh, I don't know how relevant it is. I was watching a video yesterday about what they were wanting to do with biological chips. Okay, instead of using silicon transistors, they wanted to use organic materials. So that person had faked his data, but he showed a perfect S curve. That was the curve which people expect. As in, growth should be rapid, and then it tapers. So many places it's applied. So then this is called a logistic method. Okay. So then finally the method of density. So we know that there's a trend in the density or increase of population or decrease in population. Are those trends matching for a particular area? Will it match in the future? So these sort of things we have a look at, and then we go in for this method of density. Okay. So these are general methods which are used for the forecasting of population. How is this relevant to us? When we design a water system, we are talking about adequate quantity. So, is that quantity of raw water available? Will we be able to service this number? That is what we are going to have a look at. So, in water treatment, this will be the first step. In fact, extension would be so much of sewage is going to be generated from so much of raw water. Okay, so sometimes all the water need not come into the sewage system, so all those things will be seen. But this also forms a basis for the design of the sewer systems subsequently. Okay, so do you have any doubts or any problem in this? The principles are the same. Okay, even what I studied, this is what I studied in 2000. Okay, today also when I go and open another book, I use Santosh Kumar Garg, Water Supply Engineering by Santosh Kumar Garg. He also has the same thing. I thought, wow. When I see our government also has the same thing. Okay, so this is something. I have another short video where I'm going for the another. This is another interesting video. I'm just putting review. You can try to mentally visualize the differences and similarities between the two systems. Again, it's going to be the same thing: some filtration process, some flocculation process, and
this is a very basic overview of the water treatment process. Customers always need water, but rainfall is seasonal and increasingly unpredictable. So we often use storage reservoirs to make sure there's always a supply for treatment. By passing water through mesh screens, we remove sticks, water weeds and other large foreign objects. The air takes some odours and gas from the water and allows some dissolved metal salts to separate to be filtered out. We add air by cascading the water down a tower, spraying it into the air or bubbling air through it. At this stage, there are still some fine pieces of matter suspended in the water, along with colour and bacteria. We add a precisely controlled amount of a coagulant like ferric or aluminium sulfate. This reacts with the material in water, making it all stick together to form what's known as floc. To make this flocculation happen, water and the coagulant have to be mixed together very quickly and thoroughly in a special device called a flash mixer. Next comes the clarification process. The floc forms itself into sludge and is separated in a specially designed tank called a clarifier. This sludge layer is called the sludge blanket. To control the blanket, sludge is periodically drained off, concentrated and removed for safe disposal. Particles filtered out on the RGF, the rapid gravity filter, are removed by backwashing. The water now needs filtration to get rid of any remaining particles. Water is filtered slowly through very fine sand or sand-like material. For some river waters, we use ozone gas injection as a treatment stage. This can work in conjunction with GAC or granular activated carbon treatment, where the water is filtered through carbon granules to take out any undesirable traces of largely natural organic materials. The carbon in these filters is removed and regenerated by heat so it can be used again. Now the water's filtered and thoroughly cleaned, it's disinfected to make sure no harmful bacteria remain. A small, controlled amount of chlorine is the most effective method and provides essential customer protection. This method is used across most of the world. The chlorine has to stay in contact with the water for a period of time for effective disinfection. Last but not least, adjustments are made to the pH levels of the water during the treatment process so that it's neither too acid or alkaline. This helps pipework, fittings and the water itself. From the treatment works, water is fed into a huge mains pipe network, nearly 43,000 kilometres long, which forms a grid around the region. This grid is then accessed directly to your home, and when you turn your tap on, it's available to you. Clean, safe drinking water.
So, what is the difference in this process with the earlier one? Sorry?
Filtration was more refined and this.
Okay.
And disinfection, they only use chlorine, not the ozone.
Yes, okay. They bubbled air here, but anyway, ozone, you're right. And then they didn't go for the thickener in the previous one, clarifier. Okay. About the clarifier, I also got another very good video on YouTube, but I'll be using that for my sewage treatment because I feel that it's more appropriate for that part. And the next thing is is a reference. This is a reference which I'm using. Okay, this is basically you immediately say it's for Tamil Nadu. Yes, it is for Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry. And so what I'll do is I will stop for now. Okay, we will